I'm Marc Silber. I'm a photographer and an author in Carmel, California. And we have a special episode, and it is brought to you by our friends at DxO who make the Nic 3 collection. It's a famous plug-in suite. Now, if you've read my book, Advancing Your Photography, you know that I'm a fan of the Nic collection. I've been using it for years. DxO, who makes the Nic collection, has a special offer we're going to provide you so you can dive right in after the show. Now, we have a really special guest. His name is Dotan Saguy. He was born in Israel, grew up in Paris, immigrated to New York City in the mid-1990s, and has been calling Los Angeles his home since then for 20 years. His photographs have been published in many major publications. He's been teaching workshops for Leica. As you know, I'm a huge fan. He's published 2 books and has become an ambassador for DxO Labs, the makers of the Nic collection. And Dotan, it is so awesome to have you with us on Advancing Your Photography. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark. It's such an honor to be with you today.
What is it that drives you when it comes to photography?
What drives me is the moment. That's really, if there's the one word,
The moment.
I'm a big Cartier-Bresson fan in terms of that school of thought that everything is driven by the moment.
Yeah.
And so that's what drives me is I just hunt for these moments, and I've developed a technique and a methodology to try to have the best chance of finding them and then capturing them. So
well, let's talk about it. I have your screen open here. Tell us what's going on, and you do have a moment here for sure. There's obviously a lot happening that you kind of orchestrated all at once, it looks like.
A moment is really what I'm looking for, but juxtaposed moments is like the holy grail for me. And I adore the work of people like Alex Webb for that reason, is that ability to capture juxtaposed moments.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to do, but when you do it, it's just such a high to be able to get that and to kind of immortalize those scenes that have a lot of components to them. And like you said, there's a lot to look at. And that's really what I strive for in a picture, is to provide not just a little snack to people, but really a whole meal where you can go around and around and the eye can just kind of get lost in that picture and never get tired of looking at it.
So and something we've talked about before with past guests is that you have essentially many photographs within one photograph.
Exactly. I mean, that's really the goal. That's the ultimate goal for the kind of photography that I like doing. In this particular scene, so this is shot at Venice Beach in LA.
Right.
And it was an interesting moment that I stumbled upon when I first started this Venice Beach project, which culminated in the book a couple years later. What was happening is this surreal moment that it's kind of an only in Venice kind of thing, where you had this mom and her child with those 2 giant boas and just playing with them in the sand. And
there's
I
2. I didn't even see the other one.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, there's another one that's kind of like going like it's in the sand, going towards that woman on the sand who's actually the mom.
Okay.
And she's in this. I can just show quickly. This is her, and she's on the cover of a book called Venice Beach. And so this image was maybe 5 minutes or less into the scene. Once I stumbled upon it. And then the second image is about maybe 45 minutes later. Essentially, what they were doing, the 2 of them were snake sitting for a street performer who was on break. And actually, in this particular image, you can see the street performer coming back. He was actually walking back from his break. It's the guy all the way to the left with the cross hanging.
Okay.
And I actually didn't know he was the owner at that point because he was just coming back and I had not seen him before. I engaged in conversation with her from the beginning because sometimes I like to shoot things completely candid where people don't even know I'm there. But in cases like this where I know I'm going to have to spend the time to really capture the high moments, there is no alternative to introducing yourself because otherwise it gets weird very, very quickly.
Yeah.
All street photographers out there know exactly what I'm talking about. You have the choice of do you stay invisible or try to stay invisible, or do you just, completely engage with the subject and reveal yourself. The tough thing is once you've revealed yourself, to make yourself invisible again, like to have them just not care about you so that it can become candid again. So this was a situation where I knew I had to establish that first contact, build the trust, and then, be that fly on the wall.
Yeah.
And so that's how these pictures came about.
Let me ask you about that, because that's come up. First of all, what's the decision whether or not to become invisible or not?
My preference is to remain invisible, but the exceptions are, if the moment is not happening right in front of me and it's not a peak moment right away, but I see that there's potential, then typically maybe I'll try to stay invisible for a couple more minutes. But then when I see that that the subject has noticed me, or it's unavoidable, in order to get that moment, I have to introduce myself. Then I do that. Sometimes not even with the camera. Like I'll put the camera back in the bag, or I'll keep it, kind of down. And I don't want to be perceived as any kind of, I don't want to intimidate the subject. I really want to befriend them and make them comfortable with my presence. And then if I feel like they're comfortable enough, then I'll say, is it okay for me to stay here and take some candid shots? Just ignore me, pretend I'm not there. Pretend I'm invisible, and if that's okay with you, I'll take a few pictures, and I'm happy to share them. After I'm done, this might be some great moments that you can remember later. So, most cases, people really appreciate that, especially if it's like a scene like this. Jenna, who was the name of the mom, and Jackson is the name of the child. They were thrilled that I was capturing those moments, because they were very special moments for them as well. And they weren't, they were pretty sure that nobody was going to be there to witness them or document them. So for me to be there and be able to take those photos, they were thrilled to let me stay there and be that fly on the wall.
Let's see some more in this series. I love this image. This is just, there's so much going on here. Tell me what's happening.
So, this is one of my favorite ones of that Venice Beach series as well. I think the last one of that series that I selected for the show. But this is where my street photography sometimes kind of delves into documentary mode, and that's what I love doing, is going in between the two, because street really can get you into documentary if you just if you dig enough, and if you make enough of a contact with the subject. So this group of hippies, essentially, who were, some of them are homeless, living on the beach in Venice Beach. Others were just passing through in this van. And I befriended them. They were singing on the boardwalk one day in the rain. They were the only ones there. And I took a couple photos of them singing, one of which is also in the book, and send them the photo. I always offer to share it. That's a big, that really gets me very far in terms of people letting me shoot. And they were thrilled with the photo. They were playing music, and they were like, "Oh, that could be our next album cover," which I thought that was very, very cute. And I followed up with them. So I got their contact info to be able to send them the picture. But then I followed up with them and said, "Is it okay if I come back and follow you guys around tomorrow?" Because I didn't know, these guys are only there for a few days usually, and then they leave. So anyway, the next day I came back, and we ended up back in their van, and then I ended up being kind of the fly on the wall in that crazy van where they were passing joints around and just doing what they do, and there were some interesting layered scenes like this. With the hand up there from the top bunk.
I love that hand. That's the killer. Joint,
and they were still holding a cigarette, and the animal pants on the left with the skateboard sticking out. There's even a guitar handle at the top left, and so this photo actually I printed it in 3 feet by 5 feet in one of my exhibits, and I was able to finally read the stuff on the books in the back. I mean, there's so much. There's a poem on that leaflet on the door, on the window. There's just so much there. The badges on the guy. So anyway, I discovered things about my own photograph when it was printed this big, which is always thrilling.
Hey, you know what I love about it? I love a lot of things about it, but I feel like I'm right there which is what capturing the moment is all about. So much so that I feel like I can smell what that inside of that van smells like. But I'm not an outside observer. I'm in the moment with you, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, part of this is the moment, but a lot of it, I think, is also that focal length, to go back to that lens.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a gearhead about it, because I will have that one lens, and that's all I use. And I think there's really a great thing about just using very little equipment. Personally, I just use one camera and one lens, and that's it.
Boom.
And but the wide angle, whether you choose a 28 or 35, whatever your angle is, once you find it, and for me that's the 35, you can really get, as long as it's a wide angle, you can get that sort of, and you get close enough, you can get that intimacy that you sense in this photo. Comes through.
I think that's the secret sauce right there, Dotan. It's the 35 wide angle, but getting up close gives you that intimate feeling.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Some people get it with a 28. Some people prefer 50. But I really, when people start my street class, they come from using Zooms or telephotos sometimes, and my the first thing I try to do is to anchor them to, here's, street photography, in my book anyway, cannot be done with a telephoto. You have to get close. You have to get, as uncomfortable as it feels. And I teach them all about getting close to strangers and approaching strangers, photographing strangers, and getting comfortable with that. But there's no substitute. You can't be on the other side of the street with a 200 millimeter lens and hope to get something that's going to feel like this.
Exactly. No way. This has been wonderful. I learned a lot.
I'm so glad. Thank you.
We'll have you back again for sure.
I'm a big fan of yours.
Thank you again to DxO for sponsoring this show and for connecting me with Dotan. That's how we met. I can't think of anything else except to tell you guys, if you haven't already done so, to subscribe. We love it when you leave your comments. I see a whole bunch of them. I'm going to read them after the show. I love having you here. Stay safe, stay well, and remember, say it with me now, remember to get out and capture your own images of life.